Thank you. Good morning. I'm Tricia Hart. I'm one of the co-interim ministers here, and we are starting a few seconds before 10 o'clock because of a couple of reasons. Because we want to be on time, and because I want you all to cast your imaginations to next Sunday, 1 week from today, December 21st. When at 10:03 a.m., I don't know whether you know this yet, the solstice will happen. And Christina and Jen and Julia and the people who are planning this service very much hope that everybody will be in the room by 10:03 next week and quiet so that you can be in the midst of the solstice, okay? I know you'll forget. We'll remind you a few times, but just I hope that you'll look forward to that. We are going to sing our gathering song, which today, because of the season is just the first verse of Angels We Have Heard on High. That's the one with all the glorias at the end. So you're going to have one chance to sing all of them this morning, and I want you to throw yourselves into it. Please rise and body your spirit for our gathering song.
Good morning. What a great way to get started this morning. My name is Rebecca Strum. I'm a member of this congregation and of the worship team, and today it is my pleasure to serve as worship associate for the Reverend Tricia Hart, one of our two co-interim ministers. I have now watched all of Ken Burns' documentary on the American Revolution. It was certainly a revelation to me that Native Americans fought alongside white and black soldiers on both sides. What a chance we missed. Once again, I was dismayed that the rich story of Native peoples on this continent had been deleted from the history I was taught. And so I want us all to be reminded that we gather here today on the unceded land of the Western Abenaki people. We respect their spiritual relationship to the land, and we hope to learn from them how to live in balance with our earth. So welcome today to those of you here in the sanctuary, to those of you on Zoom, and to those of you who may be watching this service at a later date. Welcome to CVUUS, the Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society. If this is your first time here, you're invited to fill out one of these yellow cards so that we can keep in touch. If you, no, the yellow, oh, what am I doing? I haven't done this in a while, I guess. The yellow cards are if you have a joy or a concern or a milestone or a passage that you would like to share with our congregation, with us today. If you have something that is concerning that you don't wish to share but that you would like help with, one of these pink cards. And it's the blue cards if you are here for the first or second time and you'd like to keep in touch with us. If you need hearing assistance, as I do, you may, we have some devices at the back that you can get from Dorothy or Mary. This is a good time, if you haven't already done so, to put those cell phones in worship mode. And please know that you are welcome here no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter what your background. You're welcome to join us in community as we learn to live and love together. Our chalice lighting, the chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. And Tieran is going to light the chalice for us. And as he does that, perfect. If you'll join me in reciting today's chalice lighting on the screen and in your order of service. We light this chalice as a symbol of our free faith. We light this chalice to remember the miracle of the oil that burned for 8 days. We light this chalice to mark the nights of midwinter. We light this chalice as we wait for the sun to return.
Today's opening words come from a colleague, Libby Stoddard. We have come into this room of hope, where our hearts and minds are opened to the future. We have come into this room of justice, where we set aside our fear. We have come into this room of love, where we know that no lives are insignificant. We have come into this room of song, where we unite our voices in the somber and beautiful melodies of life. You are all invited to unite your voices in the somber and beautiful melody of our first hymn, Light One Candle. The words will be up here, and they're also in your hymnal. It is number 221. Please rise in body or spirit.
Hi, everybody. I am Julia Santerre. Ooh, sorry to startle you all. I'm Julia Santerre. I'm your coordinator of religious exploration, and I'm going to tell you another story this morning. So last week, I told the story of Christmas, of the birth of Jesus, and today I'm going to tell the story of Hanukkah. And Christmas, as we know, is a pretty major holiday for Christians. Hanukkah is actually a minor holiday for Jews, but because it's at the same time of year as Christmas, at least for my Jewish friends and family, it's become bigger as an alternative to Christmas. So, this actually happened in the same location as the Christmas story, just a little bit earlier. So we're in the Middle East, in a place that was known at the time as Judea. Many of the people living in Judea were farmers and shepherds, and they built a beautiful temple in their city of Jerusalem to worship God. And in this temple, there were books, there were beautiful decorations, there was gold and silver on the gates, and there was a lamp. And this lamp was kept burning at all times to symbolize God. Now, at the time, Judea was actually part of a bigger empire called the Seleucid Empire. And there's a lot more we could go into there if you're a history buff, but it's not really relevant for today, so I will restrain myself. But what is relevant is that for many years there was an agreement with the emperors of the Seleucid Empire that the people of Judea could practice their own religion. They didn't have to do what the emperor was doing and what the rest of the empire was doing as far as religious practices goes. They were kind of just left on their own. So they did a lot of religious practices that many Jewish people do today, lighting candles, worshiping their one God. That is until Antiochus IV came to the throne. And he had some issues with the people of Judea, and so he decided that he no longer wanted them to be able to practice their own religion, that instead they should have to practice the religion that he practiced and worship the Greek or Hellenistic gods. So he actually sent soldiers in to try to enforce this, to try to make the people of Judea worship these gods. And this was actually even against what was in their holy book. So they really did not want to do this. These soldiers even went and they damaged the temple, and they put statues of the Greek gods in the temple, and they put out the light of the sacred flame. Well, there was, of course, resistance. So there was an old priest named Mattathias, and he invited other people who wanted to resist to join him in the mountains. And the soldiers of Antiochus actually followed them into those mountains. But they led this resistance force, and there was actually a lot of fighting. During this, Mattathias ends up dying, and his son takes over. And his son is called Judah. And he was known as Maccabee, or the Hammer. And so, as you might have heard in the song we just sang, the Maccabees are these Judean resistance fighters. And that's how we know them. And sometimes this story is actually called the story of the Maccabees. Well, they were up against this really strong force of Antiochus's army, and there were many, many more soldiers than there were Maccabees, but somehow they prevailed. And that's the first miracle, as they see it, that the Maccabees, this small force, actually managed to send Antiochus's soldiers into retreat. They left, and they were able to come back to their temple, to come back to their homes, to practice their religion. And as they put the temple pieces back together, and they wanted to light their sacred lamp so that they could reconsecrate or rededicate the temple to God, they found they only had one tiny, tiny jar of the purified oil left, because the soldiers had tried to destroy as much of it as they could. And this tiny jar was really only enough to last for one night, and that wasn't really enough for, making more oil. But they tried, they lit it anyway, as they started making more oil, and it lasted for 8 whole days. 8 whole days so that they could make more oil and keep that sacred flame alive. And that is the other miracle of Hanukkah. And so that is why Jews celebrate Hanukkah today. They are celebrating the miracle of overcoming this enforcement against them of trying to make them not practice their faith. And they are celebrating the miracle that oil lasted 8 whole days instead of the 1 that it should have. And so that's why they light a menorah, which has a candle for each of those 8 days, as well as one in the middle to light them, called the shamash. And that is why they eat foods that are cooked in oil, like latkes, which are fried potato things that are delicious, and a jelly donut that I can never pronounce the name of properly, but also delicious. And so it is a holiday of light and candles and good food and miracles. But it is also a holiday about religious freedom, a holiday to celebrate that this group of people was able to practice their faith in the way that meant the most for them. And as a UU, I think that's something to celebrate. Thank you all. We are going to sing the children out now, and we're going to go to RE and do some more exploration of Hanukkah, and we might have some dreidels and such in there. And you are welcome to stand as you would like and sing the children out.
Good morning. My name is Claire Tescher, and it is my pleasure to serve on the CVUUS board. You'll be seeing members of the board participating in services every once in a while to remind you that you have a board, and maybe you might want to talk to us about certain things going on in our community. I will tell you today about some of the pathways to connections, most of which are printed on the back of your order of service. This month's service is, the theme is Choosing Hope, and so I will focus on opportunities that are on giving hope to our neighbors. Now, the first one actually is not printed on the back of the order of service. As most of you know, an unhoused person camped on our lawn for some time in the fall, early winter. Working with them has raised questions how our congregation can support our unhoused neighbors, especially during extreme cold weather. There will be a congregational conversation after the service today in Fenn Chapel, led by our social justice ministry, and about forming an unhoused support seed group. If you'd like to know more about what has happened so far and what our congregation might do going forward, please join us in Fenn Chapel after you grab your coffee. Now, other announcements then. The Green Mountain Justice is working to help neighbors in Addison County who are facing urgent needs. The back of the order of the service gives the website that would allow you to respond to a specific need in the community. Now, our RE kids are selling ornaments that they made to support such needs, and I'm proud to announce that they've already raised enough money for a thermal coat that will be donated by Green Mountain Justice to an unhoused person. Additional money that they raise will go to buying thermal gloves and to support Charterhouse. Our own Charles Avenue Community Cupboard is seeking donations of food, preferably snacks and cereals. Place the donations in the food cart in the lobby. They ask that you avoid canned goods during these cold months, because of the problems that can occur when the cans freeze. Gather, Middlebury's drop-in living room, is looking for hosts and people who could cook casseroles. See Colleen Brown about hosting and Dinah Smith about offering lunch casseroles. There is always a lot to do in our congregation, and I encourage you to read the back of your service, read the weekly blast that is sent via email, and consult our website. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Claire. So the theme is choosing hope, and there is a lot to be hopeful about. And one thing that I am always encouraged by is whenever I hear anything about World Central Kitchen and where they are and the fact that they don't wait, they just go and then somehow find tons of food which they cook for people. I think it's a remarkable ministry. Jose Andres has a remarkable life story. You should learn about it if you don't already. So I'm mentioning this now because it is World Central Kitchen who is the beneficiary this month of our shared offering. Your gifts will both go to help this congregation continue to exist and function and be happy and hopeful, and to help the work of World Central Kitchen this month. So what I'm trying to say is that your gift actually will make a real difference. You can, of course, put something in the offering basket when it comes by you. I just want to remind you that that QR code in your order of service is there for a reason, and it's pretty easy to do it online, too. This morning's offering will now be most gratefully received. Today I have one yellow card, 2 yellow Post-its, and 2 white handed to me separately. So they're not always yellow, these wonderful cards that are so important. as a way for us to stay in touch with each other as a congregation. Actually, 3 of these came in via Zoom. So I will read the first one of those, which is a note of thanks from Dottie Nelson on Zoom, who thanks Margie and Jordan and all, today Dorothy and Susie too, who make it possible for so many people to participate in these services on Zoom. It is a wonderful ministry that you do. Thank you. And thanks, Dottie, for reminding us to be grateful. Bobby Loney also expresses sadness, deep sadness, related to the Australian beach shooting of people celebrating Hanukkah. It's almost hard to imagine a sunny, warm beach celebration of a community being so horribly disrupted with so much violence. And then there's a note via Zoom from Helene and Larry Vanderberg. Helene and Larry, I've been thinking about you since last night. Since the 2 of them and I, and perhaps some of you, are alumni of Brown University and are feeling, oh, sorry, wait, Helene went there. It's her alma mater, but Larry met Helene there. That's right, because he went to RISD. He went to that design school down the hill. I know, we all know that these things happen on our part and are a part of life somehow, horribly, in our country today. This one hits very close to home. I took a class, an econ class, that I was only taking because my father said he was paying my tuition and I had to at least take one useful class. Or something. He was probably kinder than that. So in that very room where the shooting happened, I lived within yards of that building in that part of campus, and it is, it's hard to accept, and I don't think we should, that this somehow is a part of our life these days. I'm grateful to the administrators, the president and others at Brown who said to the students, just go home. Don't finish the semester. Don't worry about your exams and your papers. Just go home because you need to be with people that love you now. An important message, I think. And two more yellow cards. One from Ellen Flight. She writes, today marks the first anniversary of my mother, Vera Flight's, death. Ellen was traveling at the time, and collectively, her mother's caregivers and sister believe that her mother, waited until I was well into my trip so that I would continue on. Her spirit of adventure inspired me and my sister to travel and try new things. She encouraged reading books and led us to read by her example and enthusiasm for a variety of authors. This season is hard. It was our father who encouraged us to actively participate in a church community. The love and support of CVUUS has been so important in my journey, Ellen writes, first caring for and then losing my parents. Thank you for your support over the years. And finally, as we get closer to Christmas, a holiday that highlights a family finding no room at the inn, it is good to remember that here in Vermont, that continues to happen, even today. The Addison County Interfaith Affordable Housing Alliance, started here at CVUUS, supports many groups working to support those that find themselves without housing. Home Share Vermont is one of those organizations. And currently, there is a young woman who is losing her HUD subsidy for housing as of January 1st. And she'd make a great home share guest for someone. She's well vetted by home share, and it would be wonderful if we could help her to find housing before she becomes homeless. I was told in preparation for reading this to you, the wonderful and kind of amazing little bit of data that you may not know, that 75% of the Addison County volunteers for home share are CVUUS folks. There were, it was 100%, and then someone joined, and then it became 75%. But anyway, I think that's awesome. If you are someone with room in your home to share, you can speak with Abby Sessions. Abby isn't here, but Hannah is. I saw you come in, yes. Connie Kenna, Ellen Flight, or Connor Timmons, who actually is the executive director of Home Share. So think about it. Think about it.
So, am I still here? Am I here? Yes. So tonight, I will be lighting the first candle on my menorah. This is the menorah that I grew up with, and that my mother, raised a Southern Baptist, married to my father, who was a Reformed Jew, but it was my mother who I really remember carrying on the traditions of Hanukkah and telling us the story and helping us to light those candles. And I've always celebrated Hanukkah and Christmas. We moved quite a bit, and when we moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana, my parents decided it was time to join a Reformed temple, and we did that, and I attended Hebrew school for 2 years, and did learn more about my Jewish heritage. And when we moved to Rocky River, Ohio, the next year, that's when my parents found Unitarianism. It was just Unitarianism by itself at that time. But my mom did continue to encourage us to remember our Jewish faith. My husband, Chuck, was raised in a conservative Jewish household, and which kept kosher. I received, I don't know whether it was their milk or their meat plates, but I have one set of his family's china. He was mostly also non-practicing, like my father, but it was from his incredible mother's warm, welcoming Jewish family, the Dolobofs, that I really understood my Jewish roots and the celebration of Hanukkah. And as Julia told us, it was not a major holiday. I actually really love Passover, which maybe I can talk about sometime. But there was a warm, welcoming feeling. There was Hanukkah gelt for the kids. There was lots of candy. There was the retelling of the story. And my husband's Aunt Amelia made the best latkes I have ever tasted in my entire life. We've all tried to reproduce them, but there was nothing like hers. I was talking with my daughter the other day and telling her that I was going to be talking about Hanukkah at this service, and she told me that she has just purchased her first menorah. So she is going to, as a woman in the family, she's going to be continuing that tradition with her partner, Ben, who was raised Roman Catholic. So those are all very fond memories, and I'm so grateful for all of them. But at this time of year, it can also be sad for some of us. My husband Chuck died in 2021, and this is the first holiday season that, for a variety of reasons, I will be without any of my family. I've remembered Chuck with a memory ribbon here in the past, and I'm grateful to CVUUS for that opportunity, that tradition. And at this time, I'm going to fill out a memory ribbon with Chuck's name on it, and I invite any of you who would like to write the name of a loved one on one of these ribbons to come up and do so, and then tie it onto our tree at this time.
Let's sing together. O come, Emmanuel, an ancient Advent hymn. It is in your hymnal, and the words are here. Certain conditions characterize this season in this part of the world. I do want to pay attention to the fact that when I was talking about Christmas last week, as Richard Hopkins reminded us after the service, I was displaying the terrible bias of the Northern Hemisphere. Nevertheless, in the Northern Hemisphere, here where we are, certain conditions characterize this season, regardless of your affiliation, religious affiliation, or lack thereof. 3 of these are urgency. An overfull to-do list is a symptom of this. Many things to buy, possibly more than we can afford, and not enough days to fit it all in. And then there's worry. Worry about the government and climate and injustice and people dying. The second condition is inhospitable weather. The air is cold. It's beautiful, but it's cold. The roads are treacherous. The sidewalks are slippery. There is more darkness than light in the morning, at supper, and sometimes in between. I was driving this morning and I could sort of see that there was a sun behind the clouds, but it was very low in the sky, and it was kind of like the light was turned down. It's not warm. It's not light. And our electric bills are high and getting higher. And there's worry about the climate and injustice and people dying. The third condition, it seems to me, that's characteristic is high expectations. Not necessarily of our own making, but high expectations all around us, nevertheless. Expectations of wonderful things, beauty and generosity and presence and happy endings and exciting beginnings and warmth and joy and compassion and love, and a fear of not getting any of that quite right, in addition to worrying. I don't know about you, I find these seasonal conditions to be a pretty powerful combination. And probably the only sure thing is that success will prove elusive, and failure in some area or another pretty much assured. Surviving until New Year's might be a reasonable substitute. So there are conditions of the season, and then there are stories that characterize this season. Different stories, but in some ways similar. They tend to be about miracles in which everything is changed. A baby born in poverty redeems the soul of the world and all people. A battle against impossible odds, won finally by the right people, religious freedom restored, and there's evidence, a sacred light that burns for 8 days when it was not expected to. Then there's the story of the Grinch. I brought this up last week, and I understand it was a surprise to some of you. Maybe you haven't gotten to the end of the book recently, because that's where the Grinch learns, against all odds, that Christmas is about love, not presents. And he gives back everything he stole, and he earns a heart 3 sizes larger and many new friends in the process. And then there's another story that I'm very fond of, maybe you too, where snow comes to Vermont just in time for all the right people to finally fall in love. And a whole bunch of busy people drop everything to remember how much they care about each other. We could go on. So how do these seasonal conditions and characteristic stories fit together? One answer, of course, is that they don't, and it doesn't matter. The stories exist, pretty much all of them, to witness against the messages of culture, to contradict materialism and acquisitiveness, to prove that light and hope are present and possible even when nature, not to mention fear and greed, are in front of us. Another answer, though, is that the stories and the seasonal conditions actually do fit together pretty well when we look more closely. I've had a lot of time to think about this in the last 28 years as a UU minister, because every single year I get to preach about it. And I try to not always do it the same way. Last week I told some stories about the 19th century Unitarians who, along with their culture and the terrifying challenges of their time, gave us, kind of invented, an idea of Christmas that was about love and compassion and possibility. I talked to Pam Berenbaum this week about Hanukkah. It didn't seem right she is going to return as a worship associate in another several weeks, but she couldn't be here today. And I said, what should I say about Hanukkah, Pam? And she said, the thing that's most important to say about Hanukkah is, despite the story that Julia did a fabulous job of telling and that I'm about to talk about again in a minute, Hanukkah is a celebration that happens at home. The story behind the miracle of the Holy Lamp does not get analyzed and studied for meaning very often, apparently. And the amazing gift, Pam says, is that this is a holiday where it's actually, you're supposed to just sit and stare at candlelight, which she says is pretty wonderful, and I agree with her. So the two oldest stories in the short list that I mentioned, the Christmas nativity, birth of Jesus story, and the Hanukkah story, are actually both deeply political. The story's about justice. I know it all happened long ago, and a lot of it is myth, but still, there are lessons about justice and power in both of these stories. That was true then and now. It's not all about light and beauty. Both stories are about people struggling within structures of power that do not have love at the center. A good bit is known about the social and political backgrounds of both of these stories. First, the long, violent, and eventually successful rebellion, which took place in what we now call Israel. Julia told you the key players. Antiochus, the not friendly leader who decided that his power was so extensive that he would not only make rules about what could be worshipped by the Jewish people, but that in fact the only worship that would be appropriate was actually worship of him. An interesting thing for a leader to want to do. This all happened in the middle of the 2nd century before BCE, just about 165 years before the birth of Jesus. We actually know some of this stuff for sure. Palestine had been occupied for centuries by one unfriendly state after another, but the Assyrians, the Seleucid dynasty, and especially Antiochus IV, was the worst. And the other main character in the story, the Hanukkah story, is Mattathias, who refused to obey all of Antiochus's decrees and took to the hills and raised a guerrilla army who were known as the Maccabees. So they won, the Maccabees won. It's also true that for reasons I don't know the details of, Antiochus actually gave up and decided it wasn't really worth doing this anymore. And so that meant that the Maccabees could come down from the hills and they could come into the temple, and what they found was that it was trashed. I've tried to imagine what that must have been like for them to come into this sacred space where they had not been allowed to be for years and see the desecration of all of it. I've obviously spent way too much time serving churches in my congregations in my career, because I always try to wonder what the first board meeting was like after that particular disaster. I'm sorry, I'm telling you the truth. I probably shouldn't, but So there they were. It was terrible. The lamp was not only empty of oil, it was destroyed, and that is the miracle. The real miracle is that they even tried. But the miracle of the holy oil that should have gone out after just hours or maybe one day and didn't. So it was just that, a lamp's light. These were poor people, people that the government, even the more moderate elements in their own party, wished would just go away. And the miracle was that somehow there was a future. Enough sacred oil, enough faith and hope and dreams, life and community even. It wasn't much, they were still poor, but they had one another, and they chose hope. So if you have that story, it really is interesting to, through that lens, think about the story that supposedly happened about 165 years later, the Nativity story. At that point, it was the Romans who were occupying Palestine. It was Caesar who was issuing decrees about taxes and registering with the authorities. Think about that. The institutional structures of Judaism were in complete disarray at the time. There were factions, there were parties, there was a temple elite who spent most of their energy accommodating the Romans, who were, of course, pagans. There was no war, at least not quite then, but many, many poor people who were getting squeezed in the middle of this system that didn't care about them. Mary and Joseph were typical of many Jews at their time. They were pushed around by forces well beyond their control and trying to make a life in the middle of it all. So Mary's baby is born into abject poverty, and yet, because of the signs, because people wanted to believe, this one birth became an idea, a religious idea, but in some ways even more political, that an unjust world can be transformed, that it might be possible for life to be peaceful and just, that there can be compassion even for the poor. In the story about the shepherds and the angels and the wise persons, what's interesting is that nobody quite understands what's happening, but they're all trying to pay attention. They're all trying to just come and see and imagine what it might all mean. It is not much. And after all is said and done, the characters in the story are still poor. They're still very much at risk of oppression and death. The Romans were still the occupiers, and the future was not bright. But in spite of everything, they saw hope, and they chose it. There are those who understand the waiting and the preparation of Advent, these 4 weeks leading up to the Nativity. Not quite so much as a time to purify our hearts and welcome the arrival of the Savior. That's what I was taught as a child, and I didn't know how to do either of those. But this season of waiting, some people say, is actually more but finding a way to rise up as strong and as straight as we can in the midst of forces that make us wish we would disappear, and that make us want to run away from every hard truth, to lie down and take a nap until it's over. The stories are powerful, I think, because they insist that there are forces available, even in this very imperfect world, to transform what is into what might be. Some see that force as God and see that manifest in the actions of the characters in the stories who are guided by a divine hand. But here's a thing I think we should notice. In all of these stories, God is a background character at most. Actually doesn't have any speaking lines. It's the human actors that have the big parts. Mattathias, his sons, the people who relit the holy lamp, Mary and Joseph, even the shepherds. Now, from this great distance in our time, they show up as faithful and brave and beautiful and holy, but were they? Most of them, probably all, were clueless about what would happen. Not one, in any of the scripture, the stories that we have, not one predicted exactly or even approximately what good might come from their reckless actions. It was reckless of the Magi to take off and follow a star. Think of the intrigues and the coups that could happen in their courts while they were gone. It was reckless of Mary and Joseph to imagine that someone would take them in when the baby was to be born, that the baby would survive. It was totally reckless of the shepherds to leave their sheep. We ignore the fact that, they probably wouldn't at this time of year have been out with their sheep, but nevertheless, it was reckless of them to leave. And the Maccabees were the very definition of reckless and clueless. And they did what they did, and miracles happened. Stories told, and there are lots and lots of them, at this holy time of year, are about ways that in ordinary people's lives, holy sparks of goodness and possibility and love show up, even when it is not at all reasonable to expect them. Miracle stories, not just because of what happens, but because of the choices that people make and the way that life responds. And all of us are part of that response. It wasn't just centuries ago, it's now. And guess what? We are clueless too. We do not know what will happen as a result of our being in the world. Many of us, at least sometimes, are pretty sure that we can show up as and shine as holy sparks. Peter and I have a friend who has a daughter who's, well, she's 4 now, but she was 3 when she said on a video that her mother posted of her, probably shouldn't have, but it's our favorite, because this little girl whose name is Austin really wants something, and she's pretty sure that it's the right thing, and she says very quietly to her mother on this video, pretty tour, pretty tour. Pretty tour, that's going to happen. Pretty tour, we need it. And so that's what Peter and I say to each other, pretty tour, pretty tour. Some of us know that there are times when we can show up, that we can, in the phrase, be God's hands and feet, doing the works of goodness in the world. I think the harder part is not that imagination, it's the deciding to be reckless and try something anyway. And there are so many ways that all of us can do that. Claire, reading the Pathways to Connection, I was struck by how many ways, just showing up this morning, we all have opportunities to go to a meeting after the service, to talk about developing programming and ideas and possibilities that are now just ideas in people's heads for unhoused people. Reading the blast, you read the note from Green Mountain Justice, there's actually the link to the part of the Green Mountain Justice website where you can go and you can look at a whole list of things that Green Mountain Justice hopes that people will either pay for or actually donate. You should talk to Tom first to make sure that they're still right. But you could buy presents for a 7-year-old or a grocery card for people who don't know how they're going to have any food to feed their families. It's very immediate things. I want to mention one that wasn't mentioned in that list. You all know, I hope you all know, that there is this fund that we call the discretionary fund that exists in this congregation. We don't hear about it much because the gifts that are given, which are frequently to members of the congregation or friends, are of course held in confidence. But that fund exists and is funded by the people in this congregation. Christina and I are aware of a couple of upcoming requests that right now there's not enough money to cover. And we're going to do a collection on Christmas Eve, and that will be wonderful. But I just want to tell you don't need to wait, because if you follow that QR code, which is in your order of service, and you see the drop-down menu of places that you can give money, one of them is the discretionary fund. Just saying. We do not have to have all the clues before we act. We do not need to know ahead of time how it's going to end. We can be actors in our own life, in our own world, and believe that we will have the strength, enough wisdom, and certainly enough love to continue. We can choose hope. So may it be. Julian Jamaica Soto wrote this. In this community, we hold hope close. We don't always know what comes next, but that cannot dissuade us. We don't always know just what to do, but that will not mean that we're lost in the wilderness. We rely on the certainty beneath, the foundation of our values and ethics. We are the people who return to love like a North Star and to the truth that we are greater together than we are alone. Our hope does not live in some glimmer of an indistinct future. Rather, we know the way to the world of which we dream, and by covenant and the movement forward of one right action and the next, we know that one day we will arrive at home. Would you speak together the words that we say as we extinguish the flame? Thank you, Becky. It's coming up. We extinguish this flame, remembering always to keep love at the center.